Skip it up and that up. What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the first official episode of the Rich and Red podcast. I know I had another one uploaded to Patreon. That was just what was our previous YouTube video, so you guys could check out how the format will be. For anyone who's interested in supporting the Rich and Red podcast, we are trying to keep this. Can't guarantee it, but we're going to try to keep it sponsorship free so we could talk about whatever we feel like talking about without fear of any kind of repercussions. You could donate as little as $1 a month, and it gives you access to a high quality MP3, which you could download and put on any device, and you get access to the video version of the podcast, which we are recording now. I'll have a link in the description of the podcast so you can check out the Patreon, and if you do support us, thank you so much. So anyway, I know Liana has been dying to talk about this.
No, I've been dying playing this.
You've been dying playing it. See,
oh my God.
I will say this, and maybe this is why I'm a little bit more forgiving than you, Liana. We're talking about Mass Effect Andromeda, by the way. It was funny last week. I told Liana I'm going to download the game. I'm curious to see how, because I have the AMD Ryzen rig, and I want to really test a lot of games on it. So I'm like, I'm going to download it. I've never been a Mass Effect fan, but I'm going to give it a shot to see how it performs, and I'm interested to see if the faces are insane as, which I'll talk about in a minute, as everyone's saying they were, the facial animations. So I'll give my.
So I deliberately bought it on console
because you knew I got it on PC
to compare that experience. Like, I thought, okay, most people. I usually play Mass Effect on PC, but my video card's getting a little bit old. And I thought, well, let's be scientific about this. If you're playing it on PC, I'll play it on console to see if there is a performance issue related to hardware or related to platform. So this is going to be interesting as well to see how the experiences compare. And you played as Scott Ryder. I played as Sarah Ryder, correct?
Yes, I played as the...
Yeah.
Because they gave you the option where you can make your own character. You can play straight up as Scott Ryder or Sarah Ryder. So I played Scott.
And that was right straight up where I started having problems with the game.
Really?
Is the character creation issue. I do not see the point of creating this character, giving it a name and a face, and then saying, oh, but you can make any character you want. It's one or the other from a design principle. It is fine if you're going to be like The Witcher and have Geralt of Rivia, and Geralt is Geralt, and you can't change him, or you have a customizable playable character. But you can't have both and not create dissonance. And so right off the bat, I was like, should I bother making my own character? No, everything in the design of this game, everything in the marketing of this game is telling me you have two choices, white chick or white dude with stubble. So fuck it. I'm not going to spend all the time, moving away from the norm. Boom. I want to see what the deal is with her face. So, you can't have it both ways as a game designer. You have to decide, this is our character, and this is what he or she is going to look like. Horizon Zero Dawn did the same thing. Or you don't put your character on the box art, and you let the player make them whatever you want, like Fallout or like Dragon Age or something like that. Both are correct, but you can't send both messages to the player at the same time. Just right off the bat.
Yeah, it's nothing more than a cosmetic character that you're creating, because the storyline's still going to follow either Scott or Sarah.
Well, okay, and I can make my character black, but my brother and father are still white. What? It's just so bizarre, And I wasn't going to waste the time. I have a character. This is not part of the process. I only care about character customization when it actually impacts gameplay. So, those games where, I'm a big Ravenloft fan from back in the day, tabletop Dungeons and Dragons. And if you played Ravenloft as anything but a human, you had a profoundly different experience because the game system is intentionally racist. So I like when there's perks, even, the dexterity perks for like the halflings or the elves in vanilla D&D. That allows me to customize with purpose. I'm not going to play an orc thief. I'm going to play my little halfling thief because they're awesome. They can get into small spaces. But just cosmetic, I really don't care. And the Bethesda games drive me the craziest with that because, let's spend all this time customizing the character that you barely see.
Oh, yeah. In the Elder Scrolls, you don't see it at all. Like Skyrim, yeah. You don't see it.
Yeah. And even in Fallout pre-4, you barely saw your playable character. So who cares what they look like? And there's really no gameplay shift, but that developing really pretty assets you barely see is another complaint I have with Andromeda. Did you get to the Nexus yet?
I don't believe so. I played about 3 hours plus of the game.
Yeah. Okay. They spent a lot of time and money on ships and armor. You can tell. They are stunning. Somebody in management really likes space. It is so pretty, but all that pretty is put into the non-interactive parts of the game, so it ends up being pretty and annoying. And so the whole game is like, that woman who's really, really attractive when you first meet her, and she gets less and less attractive the more she talks. Mm-hmm. It's that sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, but the ships are beautiful, and the planets are beautiful, and space is beautiful, but I can't do anything with it. So I felt like I am an early adopter in an IP that's eventually going to be a movie or a television show or something where they can make butt tons of money, not a gamer playing a game because, the bean counters are like, well, the margins are so much higher in these other forms of entertainment. And that's just a feeling on my part. But after the whole Mass Effect 3 debacle and the press and EA itself came out and essentially called their fans entitled, it's really interesting that they produced a somewhat entitled product in that regard. They put all their money into spaceships, and people are saying they outsourced the
facial animations. Yeah,
it wasn't outsourcing; it was actually insourcing. The best anyone can tell, EA Bucharest did it, which is still within the company. That's not
outsourcing. Yeah.
No, that's not outsourcing. They keep saying it's outsourcing. No, it's insourcing. And Ubisoft does that all the time. So that is no fucking excuse for what they ended up with.
And Rockstar does it too. Yeah, don't Rockstar? Yeah.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, I think so. For everyone out there who's going to jump at me, I'm not sure, but I think they do. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. That's just coming off the top of my head right now.
So what? They have different studios that specialize in one does Ubisoft Toronto does all the motion capture because the studio is in Toronto. Like, they own this. It's a giant blue box with a lot of cameras around it, and they do all their stuff there. But that does not explain what happened with those human beings.
See, it's funny. Like, they're pretty good. I've seen better facial animations and things like that. There was only one scene.
There's some horrendous ones later on.
Well, you've played more than me, so maybe that's why. Because there was one scene where a woman has a helmet on, and her eyes are, like, exploding out of her head. It was just like, okay, everything else was okay till then. And I was like, oh, that's what they're talking about.
The eyes are especially bad. That's in the 1.05 patch notes. That's one of the things they're fixing, is the eyes on the character. But there are a few characters, Addison, once you get to the Nexus, god awful, like terrifying. She's the one in the videos. I'm sorry, my face is tired. That character, it is horrifying. But even Liam on the team, the guy who whips the grenades all the time, one of the two you start with, he, at least on the PS4 version, he turns a certain way and there's pockmarks in his face. I noticed this on quite a few of the captures. There are divots here and here where it's almost like data's missing. And so they turn their head and it looks like there's craters. It's almost like that's where, like, a joint on the headset or something was, but there is definitely a divot in the capture there. But there's one, he's a Latino character, and I don't remember if he's on EOS or one of the I always forget the name of the alien race. I call them the vagina faces that Jal is part of. But
the vagina faces, that just sunk in.
They look like vagina faces. They do. It's like clitoris, labia, and you'll never be able to unsee that now. I apologize.
Thank you.
But they're basically reverse L-Core because there's no L-Core. There's no Drell, there's no L-Core, there's no Quarian, and there's no Hanar in the game. And they write them out with one line. These are alien races from previous Mass Effect games. And they write them out just by saying, oh, their ship had a technical problem and they can't join us, which is a huge lore breaker. Are you familiar with the Quarians from past games?
No, I'm not. Like I said to you, that this is why I'm glad you're here, because I've never been a huge Mass Effect fan.
Yeah. So
I played it for a few hours. I'm like, this isn't that bad. Whereas you're like, no, I know this is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. So, no,
I'm having connection issues. Oh, okay, it's getting better now. But the Quarian are essentially space nomads. Their planets got taken over by this robot uprising, and they are adrift in space. So they have this fleet, kind of like Battlestar Galactica. And so if their ships break down, they have no homeworld to go back and fix it. So the idea that the Quarian ship couldn't make the jump and had to catch up, but the Krogans are there, that are this semi-primitive race that everybody else basically gave them technology. They obviously focus grouped and said, okay, which are our most popular races? We're going to go with those, and we're going to find some excuse. And the excuse was really bad as to why the Quarians aren't there. I think they just, again, budget. They only had so much time and money, and they wanted to create the Ket and the Andara, or whatever the vagina face aliens are really called. But when you take out, I mean, the Quarians are a huge race because Tali, a playable character, potential romance option, she's the one that you finally see her face in the third game through the romance dynamics, the romance mechanics. It was a big deal when you finally saw her face. That race isn't in this game. So all the Quarian fans are going to be really disappointed. I'm fine because I'm a Krogan fan, and there's some weirdness with that, but there are way bigger issues with the game beyond that. The writing's atrocious. It's just bad. You probably haven't encountered a lot of it yet. I have a real issue when people in sci-fi talk like modern day millennials.
I've noticed that already. Already with how much I've played.
Yeah, like slang and the way people speak hasn't evolved in hundreds of years. Like even before the 600-year jump, they're way ahead of us in the future. So why are they talking like a barista at Starbucks?
It's that saccharine attempt to try to be relatable to an audience. And
I don't want relatable in sci-fi. I want inherent contained truth. I want to buy in. I want, like, the show The Expanse, that they create their own diction and they create their own accents for this, working class group. And it takes a while to get into, but then you feel like you're in a world.
Yes. Because it feels legitimate instead of them trying. It's almost like it annoys me when you watch a movie about ancient history and for some reason everyone from ancient history had an English accent. Didn't matter where they're from.
You're watching The Count of Monte Cristo, which takes place in Italy, and they have English accents. Why?
You're like, I guess everyone in historical times had English accents. That's what makes you think of ancient history. It's so ridiculous. It bothers me so much. The other thing that pisses me off too is I'm so tired of companies releasing games unfinished. There's no way that EA didn't know, or BioWare didn't know, the issues with Mass Effect Andromeda when they have this huge patch coming out. Your reputation gets hurt every time you do this. Like, is it really, I guess to investors, it's that important to say, nope, it's more important to get the game out during this quarter than to get the game actually working properly. Because now you just damaged the series even. It's going to take a lot for Mass Effect series to come back from Andromeda.
Because this is their second screw up.
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of ways it's the same problem. I mean, leaks coming out of the company are blaming management. The artists want to know want people to know this wasn't us. But EA is they are far less likely to push a game back than Ubisoft or any of the first parties or even Activision. EA is all about quarter to quarter because they've got that stock price to worry about. And so they don't see each individual brand as valuable. The stock price is the entity that matters. So they'd rather push a game out the door and get some revenue that quarter than skip it and have an abysmal Q2 earning.
Well, remember that happened with Battlefield 4? That was the same. That game was a train wreck when it first launched, and that was, again, it was a rushed out. I think that was when the PlayStation 4 was dropping too. So I have a feeling that either Sony or Microsoft, because basically both consoles came out at the same time, launched. I think there was some pressure from Microsoft and Sony to get Battlefield 4 out and rush it out the door.
There's huge pressure, but when there was a problem with, I think it was Black Flag that got pushed, that was a bundle title. And Ubisoft pushed it anyway, and I gave them real credit for this because they just gave you a voucher. And then you downloaded the game when it was ready. Okay, you didn't have it right when you bought your shiny fancy console, but you still got the game, and it was still much better than Unity was that was pushed out the door. But the thing about Unity was at the core of that, it was buggy, and some of their technical experiments didn't work. But the writing and the core design philosophy of that game was not just fine, it was actually good, and it wasn't served by its technical issues. I can't say that about Andromeda. Every element of that game is mediocre to bad. Like, even the combat that people are saying is so much better. We were talking about this before we got rolling. I'm sorry, I don't want to be an elitist gamer jackass, but that is a lame Gears of War copy where the stick to cover is more like later Halo games. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't. It does all the components, but the art of encounter design, knowing where to put those covers and knowing why something goes here and why do we build a level this way, it's just not there. It's just they splattered a bunch of, cover objects on a battlefield and then dropped aliens on the map. There is no finesse or art to the battle encounters.
Yeah, it's funny. Before we started recording, I was thinking what you just said. It feels like, well, Mass Effect to me always kind of felt like Gears of War-esque in terms of its combat. But yeah, it basically, that was bad, and that's kind of always been my biggest issue, is Mass Effect feels like an RPG version of Gears of War. But I see what you were saying, though. It is true. Like, even with the short amount of time that I played, like, there would be you would be looking for cover in certain spots, and there was no cover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so
I was just like, what's going on?
Dumb deaths.
Yeah. And it was just, and the combat's okay, but it just, I don't know, it just wasn't as set. I remember seeing there was ads, actually on Facebook out of all places, for Mass Effect Andromeda, showing like the fast, fluid combat of Mass Effect. And I played it, and I'm like, this ain't fast, this ain't fluid. This is kind of friggin' clumsy.
It's very slow, and I feel like the whole game, I'm a huge Doom fan, and the thing I love about Doom is the character in the setting should tell you how to play, right? And in Doom, everything about that character is aggressive. He doesn't push buttons, he punches them, right? And so that's telling the player, get in and mix it up, get in close, charge in, be aggressive. Everything about Mass Effect is telling me to run in for Sparta, but that's not the way you're supposed to play. You get slaughtered that way. You have to get behind cover and pick everybody off one by one, and it's all the things that the Gears of War franchise realized are slow, and they've tweaked their gameplay to pick up the pace and get people moving around. So in this way, as well as the graphics, Mass Effect Andromeda is about 10-15 years behind industry standard.
And plus, Gears of War 4, to be quite honest with you, that game kind of bored me, so I think it needs that whole kind of combat needs a refresh anyway. But
the game in general was...
It was them trying really hard to be like Epic Games, in my opinion. But they
Not
weren't.
though.
Yes.
Not though. They didn't have. There were no balls in that game.
None. No balls at all.
So, there were little moments like the ongoing joke about clear. Does clear actually mean clear? Is it the old definition of clear or the new definition of clear? That was that old Epic Games. But Epic Games had no fucks to give in a way that Gears 4 didn't have. And they're much closer than Andromeda was. I enjoyed Gears of War overall. I thought the combat for what it was worked, but
got repetitive though, man.
Yes, it did not have that spark, that kind of inspiration of we are gamers, and if shit isn't good, we're going to say it's not good, and we don't accept just okay, because when we sit down and we play games, we want more than just okay.
Yeah.
And hopefully, because it's funny, talk about objectivity. I actually did some promo work pre-launch for Gears of War 4. And then I was really rough on the game after release. I really didn't like Kat. And again, I felt like who she was supposed to be and what we were looking at and listening to, her backstory and everything like that is supposed to be this sort of grew up rough street rat. She's living outside the protections of the COG. But what we're getting here and what we're getting in our ears is Disney princess with like an edgy haircut.
Yeah.
And that from a design perspective, because I care so much about game design, that drives me batshit crazy, because unlike movies where you basically have to find the closest actor to what you want, you can build your character from the ground up, and I just feel like game companies just completely shit their pants when it comes to female characters. I will give Andromeda credit. Korra's pretty good in terms of female characters. The second in command with the boho haircut.
Okay, yeah.
She's all right. She is a good combination of steely and fun. And that her backstory is interesting. At first, I wasn't sure if I was going to buy it, but I don't mind Human Asari Commando the way they did it. It was cool. She's like she's like Jack Light. She's like a little bit of Jack and a little bit of Miranda in the same character, which doesn't really work, but I still like her.
I think my thing with games is that it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and they always seem, or not as much as they used to, but they're still, a majority of times, they always seem to shit the bed on the story. They either invest too much in the story to the point where you almost feel like you're playing a interactive movie, which I can't stand.
Agreed.
Or because I feel that's the thing I think is tough with video games, but I still don't give them excuses. They have all the money in the world. Or they make the story either half-assed and it's just like, why does it even exist? Like, there has to be that balance where it's still a game, it's still a fully interactive experience, and if you need a story and you want a good story, they have to find a way to weave it in properly, and there are just so many times they fail miserably with that.
I'll defend them a little bit on that, just because this is a topic near and dear to my heart. I lecture on this topic at colleges. We're still figuring out how to actually make a video game story properly. Unlike film and unlike, a novel, that format, we understand it pretty damn well. Mm-hmm. When it comes to interactive stories that are essentially incomplete before the player picks up the controller and makes their choices, there is still a huge amount of debate about what choice means. And we're caught in this period where design is waffling, like careening from extreme to extreme of choices must have in-game consequences. If it has in-game consequences, then you're not making a moral choice, you're making a practical choice. And my thought is, well, morality and practicality are linked. So who cares if it's not totally a moral choice? Make something happen based on my decisions.
Yeah.
I'm not especially interested in just selecting what dialogue option I pick. I don't care. I want my choices to matter. And past BioWare games were really good in that way. There were 5 or 6 critical choices that you made that notably changed not just the ending, but midpoints and things like that. And that's why people were so pissed at the ending of Mass Effect 3, was essentially no matter what you did, you ended up at the same choke point with endings that were literally just different colors. And a lot of the choices in Andromeda feel much more like Inquisition. The comparisons to Dragon Age Inquisition are absolutely accurate.
The Inquisition was the newest one they made, correct?
The newest Dragon Age game.
Newest Dragon Age, yeah, that's what I meant to say. I heard a lot of good things about that, though.
It suffers what I call the cilia putty effect. There's a good game there if it was kept to this scope. The problem is BioWare likes to copy. Mm-hmm. And so they took their core game and then they stretched it to be more like Skyrim, and they had to recover from Dragon Age 2 being truncated because of deadline. That was not their fault. They're still trying to pick up the pieces of not being able to do what they wanted to do with that game. But because the game got so stretched, the compelling, mechanics got pushed to the edges, and this is all just really thin with holes in it, and it inevitably feels kind of empty and warped. And I'm getting the same sense on Andromeda. Like, you spend so much time moving around planet to planet for very little reason, with these really complicated No Man's Sky inspired things going on. And
that is true. It does look like No Man's Sky. That is true. I thought that when I first went on the first world. Yep.
Of all the games to copy, why would you copy a game that we didn't know very much about before it came out?
And it's hated.
Well, they didn't know that when they were developing, but the whole thing about No Man's Sky was the procedural generation component. Mm-hmm. Andromeda's not doing that. So, other than a massive case of low self-esteem, why would you copy that?
Yeah.
But that's what BioWare does. I mean, Mass Effect is a copy of Babylon 5, Star Wars. Ironically, this game is most like the TV show Andromeda. You know, the one with Kevin Sorbo and Lexa Doig?
I don't, actually.
Yeah, it was a I liked it, but I like cheesy, like, medium budget science fiction. It was a good show. But it was exactly that. This crew was exploring the galaxy. And so it was that, and some Farscape. There's some what's that show? Lex. That's a Canadian show, so BioWare, all that stuff. But they like to copy. Dragon Age is the same way. It's Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, a little bit of Discworld. It's all just thrown in the pot. And they've run out of sci-fi tropes to copy in Mass Effect, and so they're copying games. And it's so obvious. Now, I don't know if that's BioWare itself or EA's directive saying... Because this is the problem BioWare got into. When it was an indie studio, it was quite happy to sell 2 or 3 million copies. They were happy. They made games to do that. Mm-hmm. When EA bought them, all of a sudden they had to make games that sold 5 million copies. And when you go above that threshold, and I'm sure it's even higher now because of budgets, but when you go above that threshold, you go from making a game that this core group of people is going to absolutely love to this game that a much bigger group of people think is not the greatest game in the world, but I had fun, so I'll buy it again next time. And that is a very different design philosophy.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
The Witcher started off as a game that only a core group of people had to like. Right? It got bigger and bigger and bigger as that franchise went along. But because it was essentially the same team, they still just made the game they wanted to make, and fuck whoever complained about certain elements of it. They had certain design elements that were untouchable. And that's, I think, why people fell in love with it. Because it seemed like they liked themselves so we could like it and not feel like assholes. And it just seems like Andromeda, with all this diversity stuff that has been, as much as you want to say Elite confirms something, employees inside the company are apparently saying there was a philosophical push to have inclusion, more women, more minorities, all that stuff. But
I heard that. Oh, God.
Yeah. What they ended up doing, the ugliest human characters in the whole game are the women and the minorities. So they didn't even meet their mandate, which, for all the critics now, it was funny because the reviews were brutal. I don't know if you've noticed this shift. The reviews of Andromeda were pretty brutal. And then that female developer got harassed, and all of a sudden the games press just turned right on their heel. They stopped dead and was like, oh, no, it's not that bad. All of a sudden, the critics who were like, are now defending the game because, poor baby got harassed.
Yeah, instead of being objective, it's the same shit with everything else. It's all about political gain.
But this is when companies start getting into wars with their own fan bases, and that's not good for business. I think they're selling a lot of games on curiosity here.
That's why they sold it to me.
Yeah, but if history is any guide, I mean, look at Syndicate in the Assassin's Creed series. Everybody crapped all over Unity. It became this big joke, and people started going, oh, God, I want to see how bad it is. It was a launch title, too, essentially, Unity. But then people held back their money on Syndicate. And Syndicate, if you're not an Assassin's Creed fan, you're not going to like anything they do. But Syndicate was a damn good game.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was to Unity what Assassin's Creed 2 was to Assassin's Creed 1. They took the basic idea that worked and cleaned it up so it's fun to play. And the characters are fun. The voice acting's great. The voice direction is good. And a lot of people are shitting on the voice acting in Andromeda. It's not the voice acting. It is the voice direction. The voice actors do not have context for their lines.
Yeah, it's also the writing, too. The writing is shit.
Oh, and a good voice actor can make a not-so-great line work. Mark Hamill is brilliant on that. He took some clunker lines in Arkham Asylum and made them some of the greatest things. I mean, that line from Far Cry 3 of, what the definition of insanity is? That's a cliche. That whole dialogue, but Michael Mando sold that so hard.
He was amazing in Far Cry 3.
So good. So good that when the character was no longer a major part of the game lost something. Like, he took that role and he, just did something magical with it. But they are allowed to do that under Ubi's process. The way BioWare games work, because the voice actor and the motion capture actor are not the same person, they're way more limited in what they can do. And I mean, granted, it's a completely different type of game, but they should do the voice acting first, as far as I'm concerned, if they're going to do it that way. Because then you're just pantomiming around the words, right? You're not having to force the voice actor to not ad-lib.
Yeah, and force them to go into a different direction, where sometimes the voice actor can find another creative direction for a line that makes it so much better.
Well, yeah, or put in a little pause. Mm-hmm. Or, I mean, it's all dynamics with Hamill's Joker. Like, there's one line where it's like, and if you don't stop, I will hurt you. And that's a bit of a, like, the Joker doesn't just hurt people, he murders them and then plays in their blood. So, I will hurt you is a bit out of character. But the way Hamill sold it became terrifying. Like, he actually made hurt sound worse than dying. And, what's her name? Frida Wolf, who plays Sarah Ryder. She's doing a pretty good job, but she's in a straitjacket. You can almost hear a lack of confidence. in the performance that comes from the director. It doesn't come from the actor. Like, they don't know what they're doing. And it's obvious. You know, the vagina face aliens are supposed to be these super demonstrative, super emotional race. They're constantly talking about, you are a very emotional people. And then I recognize the voice from Baldur's Gate. He's the guy that goes, you know, I would suggest you watch your actions while in this wood. That guy from Baldur's Gate 2. But he's doing Jal, and it's very stoic. It's a stoic performance, and he's got the same quality, but he's got this African accent and all this stuff. And it's like, I'm not seeing demonstrative, right? I'm not seeing. So what is this? Is this a stereotype about black people being too emotional? Like, what is going on here? It just doesn't work.
And well, that's why I hear that a lot of actors like where they do not that they like the process, but when they set them up for motion capture full body, they feel it's more engrossing because you're not just sitting in front of a mic just saying lines. You're actually in the moment.
Yes. And the technology that Ubi's using, I actually got in there and tried it out. It's incredible because you have the protagonist. They did this for Primal. He had a camera on his head, and so the characters could actually grab the main character and spin him around and do all this really cool stuff.
Holy
Whatever
crap.
you think about the game, the technology is amazing, and they actually made a screen that shows a preliminary render. So simple things like the knife ending up backwards, they can catch that at the time and fix it so it's not garbage in, garbage out. And I actually saw that bug happen while I was there. They put the knife in the character's hand, and for whatever reason, it rendered backwards. And so they went, oh, wait, and they kind of, shook it and put it back, and it popped back to where it was supposed to be.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know they had that.
It was really, really cool. And yeah, they're still in those, ping pong ball suits, which are really attractive and comfortable, let me tell you. But that is the job, right? It's to make you believe. And they do these cool things, emotive rehearsals, because they were speaking a language nobody understood.
Yeah, they made up a language. I saw that.
Yeah, so what they did was they did rehearsals where you just spoke what you felt instead of the line. It's a really neat exercise. And so they did the scene where they were all hunting the tiger. And so the guy, they actually had human beings playing the animals too. And so the guy jumps up on the mammoth and he's doing all this stuff and he went, I'm a fucking tiger. And it was everybody cracked up, but yeah, if you see that moment in the game, the tiger is going, I'm a fucking tiger.
Oh, that's awesome.
That was the awareness that Andromeda does not have. And everybody's so rough on Ubi, but at least they're trying to figure out how to make games instead of making the same mistake over and over and over again. And the thing that bugs me about this process is exactly what we're talking about here. You play it, and you're like, yeah, this is okay, but you only played 3 hours, right? It didn't compel you to do more. No,
it didn't. No, it didn't. I'm like, yeah, I'm good.
And it seems like this is a game that they were, that, I don't know if you've ever been in a project team where it's like the most important thing is that we all stay friends, right? That's what it felt like to me. They didn't give a shit about making an awesome game. And so you'll say, oh, it wasn't that bad. But it didn't compel you to invest that 35 hours to finish it, which means you're not going to buy the next one.
No, I'm absolutely not.
Yeah. And so what is that's okay worth? Like, okay, you didn't hate it. Okay, you're not freaking out. Like,
they didn't make me a fan of the series out of it, which that's very important.
Yeah, and this is the problem with marketing that EA has. The whole marketing of this game has been really poor, product aside. I mean, Destiny was not a great game at launch, But the marketing was so good. They marketed that as if it was the greatest game on the planet. So there was a buy-in. Like, people bought it, and they're like, meh. And then Bungie did the exact same thing. Oh my God, we'll fix it, we'll fix it, we'll fix it. They eventually got it to the point that it's pretty good. And then they announced Destiny 2, right? Like, they know how to make people invest. They know how to make people buy in. EA doesn't. And why they sold their game based on shitty human facial animations when there are a lot of pretty cool alien characters. There are. You haven't encountered them yet, but Vetra, the female Turian, she's pretty great. The Krogan guy is pretty great. There are aliens that are all right. We didn't see any of them in the marketing, and I have no idea why. Because the first 3, 4, 5 hours, depending on how you play, of Andromeda is the worst goddamn part of the game. Absolutely bad. Just like in Dragon Age Inquisition, where you have that noob level. Like, I don't know why they have a noob level. It's not an MMO. It's like they just brought a whole bunch of people over from Tor and said, go build a Mass Effect game. And so they build this noob zone, and then you hit your hub for the rest of the game, and it opens up again. It's like, why? There's just I don't know why we need the brother. Did you like the sibling relationship? Did you like the thing with the dad?
It felt forced. I mean, I guess we'll try not to spoil it. The part with the father, it didn't grab me at all. I think it almost happened too early too.
Okay, I feel better now, because I was playing this going, I don't know why I need this. I have no idea why. I'm dumped into this family, and I have no idea who they are. What is my relationship to them? Do I get along with my brother? Do I get along with my father? Why is my mother dead? I have no idea. That's not a spoiler. She doesn't die in game. She's not there. And it was really dissonant for me to not know. And The Witcher solved that, right? By saying, he has amnesia. Okay, that's why all these people know me, but I don't know them. Fine. Planescape Torment used the same device. But these characters are asking me questions about my relationship with my family, and I'm like, I don't know.
I don't know what the hell it is, yeah.
Like, I have no idea who these people are. I don't know. And it felt like an unnecessary complexity because they got psyched out by the idea that the main character can be male or the main character can be female. And that is writing a game like a movie. Gamers don't care. Like, oh, why is it one or the other? Well, because this is my story. This is not a canon story. This is my version of the way it went down. And I see absolutely no reason to have that level of complexity. Just, you are Ryder the same way you are Shepard. Mm-hmm. You know, Shepard didn't have a family. Shepard didn't go to PTA meetings. Shepard was military, Marine, boom. And the characterizations just kind of felt off as well. I don't know what Scott's like at all. There's only little glimpses I get of him. But Sarah's all, come on, I'm a fun-loving party up for anything. And she actually does movements like that, right?
Oh, God.
Like, there's parts where they're all like this, and Jade Rossi did it right. That is the character. But that pissed me off because it's so defined. I'm like, shouldn't I be saying what my character is doing? This is an RPG. Like, I felt like I was constantly chasing the hardwired personality of the main character. And it's funny because I didn't mind that in Horizon Zero Dawn, the hardwired snark. I think it was because it was sort of there in moments and I chuckled and it worked and I went on. But here, it was just so sloppy. It's the only way I can really describe it. It just, ugh. I don't know, I'm talking a lot about this. But
when you said you had a lot to say about Mass Effect, you weren't kidding.
I've been holding this in for like 4 days, and I've been playing this for like 4 or 5 hours a night, and just going, I don't say anything, it's so. And I think this is an interesting experiment because you, as not a fan, went away going, that was all right, but I'm not going to play it again.
No, never have been, never will. And EA, you did not convince me with Andromeda to become a fan of Mass Effect.
And me, as a pre-existing fan, went, you fucking did it to me again, EA. That is disastrous for the franchise. That is very, very bad for Mass Effect right now.
I don't think we're going to be seeing another Mass Effect game for a very long time. It is pretty, though. Man, on PC, I will say one thing. It's a good-looking game. It is gorgeous.
Except for the ugly characters.
Yeah, minus the... But, see, I didn't deal with that many because I didn't get as far as you, but except for that one scene where the woman's, like, bug-eyed, and that was it. Yeah. But everything else... But, like, the visuals, gorgeous game, but it's... Once you get past the veneer, I was mad.
I also saw notable lip-tracking issues, and that's inexcusable. Like, outsourced or not, that's basic code.
Yeah, I did notice that the lips are. It almost just looks like they were just flexing the. Yeah,
like it was an anime
texture. Yeah. It was
a dubbed anime. Yeah, and I don't mind that if they just had them jawing, but they're saying something. It's just not synced. There were numerous elements on console where a sort of critical piece of tactical information didn't trigger as a voiceover. And so I didn't know what to do. And then when the game reloaded at the beginning of the battle, there's the instruction. Fuck you, computer. Yeah,
they said there was something wrong with the tutorials. That's part of the patch, isn't it?
It is, but it goes into the game. It happened to me a lot in the vaults. You haven't gotten to this part. It's very, very, very similar to Horizon Zero Dawn. Have you played Horizon yet?
I haven't even taken the cellophane off of it. I'm planning on doing that today if I get everything done fast enough.
It's a much better game, but there's a mechanic in Horizon that is very, very similar to the mechanic in Andromeda. And having played a game that did it so well, and then to turn around and play this one that didn't do it well at all. Moments like, we have to be on our guard. This place is crawling with Remnant. And then it's 5 enemies. Like, that's not crawling. I was expecting this blast-a-minute fight. And I find the enemies... I would have preferred enemies that took less damage, but there were more of them. Mm-hmm. Than I have to dump 3 clips into this.
Yes, I've played enough to know that the fights got tedious.
Well, it's all just waiting for your combos to recharge. Mm-hmm. That fire combo and the biotic combo. That's the only way to get through these fights without running out of ammo. Or just wail on them with your Omni tool, because you can upgrade the Omni tool relatively quickly. It wasn't play tested enough. They kept that game under too much secrecy, and it feels like there's like 3 different design directives on it.
It was, like I said, from my perspective, it was okay. I'll probably never touch it again. But for someone who's a Mass Effect fan, yeah, you were very frustrated, and she let me know. And that's why Leona had so much to say. But man, you were talking for like a half an hour about it. You weren't playing.
And I was trying to stop, but I just couldn't. It was just the gamer rage was. Oh God!
That's how you. The way you felt about that is the way I felt about Castlevania: Lords of Shadow 2.
I can completely understand, because Castlevania is. Oh, this is a good segue. Castlevania is one of those franchises with a real history. I love old school Castlevania, but I'm one of those people who fell off with. I demoed a few of the new games, and it just. It's a completely different kind of game with a Castlevania coat of paint.
Well, I will say this, and that was one of the few games back in the day I actually did a full review on. The original Lords of Shadow was really damn good. Wasn't as Castlevania as it could have been, but it was enough, and it was an excellent, well-designed game. This is a good segue, by the way. Lords of Shadow 2? Oh, God, that game was terrible. I tried my damn... I have tried more than I would with any other game, simply because it had Castlevania in the name. That game was shit. But anyway, we'll get back to that in a minute.
Well, this is part of it because Konami is hiring.
Konami, I actually did a video on this too, but it's just something I really want to sink my teeth into. Konami, it was funny. If you kept up with Konami, the whole debacle with that happened with Metal Gear, Hideo Kojima, so on and so forth. Yeah. Konami is on many people's shit list. And they've basically have almost said that they don't really give a shit. We're going to make money off pachinko machines, and that's where there's more money in apps and shit like that. Yeah. The guy who runs the company now, his name is slipping my mind. I'll probably put it in the video. He knows next to nothing about games. His background isn't from games, so it's just cha-ching, cha-ching, money, money, money. But I think Konami's realizing that you can't bite the hand that feeds you, because they have recruitment ads, just making sure I got my information straight here, in Japan, like on on newspapers and Japanese media, all these different Japanese media outlets and stuff like that, where they're showing artwork of Alucard, Bomberman, Metal Gear, Castlevania. They're showing everything, and they're trying to recruit people, probably because they realize that if they don't have a backup plan, they're screwed. And they're also trying to, because Konami's name right now is shit. So what we're seeing possibly is them trying to get back into the AAA gaming industry beyond their soccer game, which the name is failing to come to mind right now. That's like the only game that they basically came out a while ago and said, really, we're only going to make PES, I think it's called. That's really all we're going to do for when it comes to console games. And beyond that, yeah, we don't really give a shit.
Wow. Because this sort of circles back, because the margins in console gaming, you can make money as a console game company, but the margins are not as high as other forms of entertainment. That they're so lured in by the siren call of mobile, and
that bothers me though.
It's a bubble market. Like, it has all the signs of a bubble market, and there are a few companies that are going to make a lot of money. But if we look at, remember Zynga?
Barely, yes. Yeah. Oh, God, Zynga. Yeah.
Zynga was the biggest name in Facebook.
What was the game they had? They were doing
Farmville.
Stuff on Farmville. My mom used to play Farmville all the time.
And they had this meteoric rise. It was impossible to not make money, but they put out too many games. They oversaturated. King came up, and Zynga crashed like a fiery, like the Enterprise in every Star Trek movie, just right. And be warned, like Konami, and this is probably why they're going back into console games, where even though the margins are low and it's a huge financial risk, you have to spend a shit ton. You get those.
But is it as much of a financial risk for a company that's already established in it? See,
it's huge. Because it's a 5-year development cycle, if you're lucky, there is a lot of burn.
I know that. I understand what you're saying with that. Yes. Yeah. I mean, you could have one of the most established developers and publishers in the world. They could have one flop and they could go out of business. But at least Konami is known for their franchises, where if they were just like a random startup, it would be tougher. That's what I'm trying to say. The thing is, too, that what these dumbass developers and publishers don't realize, and there's no numbers that you could look up to back, I just know the market. When you go into developing mobile apps and stuff like that, there's no brand loyalty there. My mom, who plays some of those games, doesn't give a shit that Konami's making it. She's like, oh, wow, there's a Konami game on the App Store on my iPhone. Oh, boy. She doesn't care. Even though she used to like Farmville, she's not going to be like, oh, Farmville was great, so I'm into Zynga games, I'm going to look for another one. No, she doesn't even know who the hell Zynga is, even though she used to play Farmville all the time. That market, that consumer is different. So when you go there, Konami, you're not going to be the belle of the ball, which they probably realized, and be like, oh, wow, Konami's making mobile games. Yay, we can't wait. No, first off, you're not making the same damn games. Minus they had like a Castlevania puzzle game or some stupid shit. You're not making the same damn games you're making on consoles. And secondly, no one in the mobile space, because they're very, very, very casual gamers, knows who the fuck you are. They have no idea. And Square Enix tried to do it. Sony like, oh, we are making these great games. They're just going to go. People are going to fly. They're going to fly off the shelves. We're going to sell them at $20 because it has Final Fantasy in it, and it didn't work. No one knows who the hell you are. So, and this is the thing. Even established mobile app companies have a tough time because people don't go back again. They get that one game, they get their fit, they have their Angry Birds, and then Angry Birds 2 doesn't sell as well because Angry Birds 1 was, people got their fix, and then they have no loyalty, so they move on. And that's the thing. And I'm hoping, and here's the biggest question, because I don't know what the answer is. I know, like I said in a video that I made, like say they hire From Software to make their next Castlevania game, the guys behind Dark Souls.
I'd play that.
I'd play that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But there's some people that hate them, especially after what they did to Kojima at the Video Game Awards. There is like a strong hatred, more than I've seen almost for even like EA at their worst.
Yeah.
Do you think that even if they come out with amazing, they refresh their franchises from years past and they're all amazing and they all get great Metacritic scores, do you think that their name is so tarnished now that they can't come back from it?
No, the one thing that studying history of gaming has proven is that you make a great game and gamers will forgive you. I mean, people hate EA, but if they really love shooters, they're going to play the better Battlefield games because they are objectively good games. You know, it's the other way around, that when a gamer loves a company, it takes them a long time
to start hating them,
to admit. I mean, look at Bungie. We talked about this in the preview as well, that after maybe Halo 3, I would say Halo 2. After Halo 2, they started phoning it in because they were alienated by Microsoft the same way. This seems to be a tale as old as time in video game development. They started phoning it in, and it was an emperor has no clothes phenomenon. People did not want to accept that Halo was not what it was because they loved it, because it made them feel good. And the problem is the stereotype of gamers right now is more powerful than the reality of gamers in the business world. Everybody thinks they're fickle and mean. The reality is that you fight the hardest with the people you love the most. And that's why gamers freak. That's why gamers are different than your mom, my mom. I saw the exact same experience with my mom in video games. That's why I was laughing silently while you're talking. Spot on observation. Gamers are different. Gamers are loyal. They believe in merit. They want to reward quality. That's true. So when they feel burned, and I shouldn't say they because I am one of them, you just saw me go on for 15 minutes about Mass Effect Andromeda. Yeah. We've seen the rage. I am so freaked out because that is a betrayal. But like any toxic relationship, the love comes back. It starts feeling good again, you run right back, even though, you know, the thinking part of your brain knows you're probably going to get burned again. And so I think they can come back, but they gotta start, you know, and this is true for all publishers. They gotta start treating their fan base with respect, and they gotta start treating their designers with respect. Konami used to be one of the greatest companies to deal with back in the day. Their swag used to be great. Their booth treatment was really good. You can tell a lot about what a company thinks of its market by how they treat people at trade shows. And you saw the change. EA has always been shitty. Big surprise. You know?
Now, when was that, though? When was Konami very good at their trade shows?
When I first started going, so 10 years ago.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's man, that's interesting because Konami, when I was a kid, Konami was like, and Capcom, they were the companies that, beyond Nintendo and their first party IPs, and there was other companies too that made good games. Tecmo was another one that made some pretty good games. And you saw those logos on NES boxes or Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo. You knew, chances were, you didn't even have to see a review. You knew 99% of the time you were going to get an amazing experience, like Super Castlevania 4, which is my favorite game of all time. I have this right here. This game is phenomenal. So the thing I'm concerned about with Konami, though, is that Konami had Hideo Kojima. And yes, gamers will, if a game is good, like they say they do have a From Software developed Castlevania that comes out and it gets 98 on Metacritic. Hideo Kojima was a star, basically, and they screwed him over. Most companies, even when they're asshats, don't have a guy like that. That's why I think there may be a little more of a chance it'll be more of an uphill battle for them to win people over, even if they do make good franchises.
Well, they have to make a good franchise, not just a good game. I mean, look at the Batman franchise, to jump over films, right? The first Christian Bale Batman movie didn't set the world on fire because it needed to sort of soak damage from the Schumacher films. But the Dark Knight, whatever the fuck it was, the one with Heath Ledger, blew up.
Yeah.
And because they'd shown they could do it. If Konami comes out with a string of 2 or 3 really great games, you'll have the people grumbling. It will still be the blah, 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 right? But I see it. I see the people bitching about EA. And then when I said, look, guys, I'm not, without a compelling reason, I'm not going to review Andromeda. I didn't get a review copy. The same people that shit all over EA tell me to get an access account so I can play like 5 hours as a demo. It's like, this is why boycotts don't work.
Yeah.
They're still consuming. They may not be paying money, but they still have the door open to be convinced that Konami, NEA, and publishers like them are not assholes. Now, if Konami tries to compete head-to-head with whatever this next thing Kojima is doing, which I am just so in love with this property because it made people so uncomfortable at the reveal.
It's so weird, yeah.
Oh, you had to be in that room, though. It was hilarious because I was like, Kojima! Like, the place just freaked. You swore, like, he is one of the biggest celebrities in gaming, right? And you could feel it in that room. And the lights are up. It looked like Trump's entrance at the Republican National Convention, with the music and the lights, and everybody's going crazy, and they're on their feet, and everybody's freaking, and they're chanting his name. And then him being very, soft-spoken and quiet is just working on something new, put this together very quickly, hope you like it. And they showed that Norman Reedus trailer.
Butt-ass naked, yeah. It was so weird.
And these guys, you felt the tension. And I was sitting, there happened to be this cluster of about 5 or 6 women who just happened to be sitting together. And I started going, are they going to show Peen? Are they going to show his penis? Because there were like the handprints on his butt and everything like that. And so this small group of us started chanting, penis, 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 penis. And the looks of death we got. We were trolling a little, right? But it was funny. And you just sort of saw the different pockets of people that you have to appeal to in gaming. But the reality is, it's the exact opposite of that Andromeda effect where you won't keep playing it, and I feel burned. The longtime Kojima fans are going to play that game because it's Kojima.
Even if it sucks, yeah.
The other people are playing it because it looks new. It looks like it's something that is risky, is innovative, all those things we claim to want, but the industry hasn't rewarded up until relatively recently.
They still don't reward it. The reason that Kojima's getting away with it because he's Kojima.
But we are getting games like Horizon Zero Dawn that are selling very well. We are getting games like No Man's Sky, which had a huge chance. They just blew it.
Yeah.
We're getting better at... You have to recognize innovation to reward innovation. And I know I dump on the games press a lot, but, you know, I used to be a games reporter, still am occasionally, but we deserve it. There are not enough people with the expertise to spot good and spot bad. And even if they can identify it, they can't give tangible details as to why, because we saw as the Andromeda thing, it's a lot to unpack why a game works or why a game doesn't work. And we just need a better trained second tier of gaming professional, and then we'll really start rewarding true innovation in the way, because how do you market innovation if you can't market the content of the game?
Yeah, it's very true.
Like, that's the problem. I mean, it's a game about spaceships and aliens, but they don't show any fucking aliens.
That market. That's why I never. God, we're talking about No Man's Sky again, but that's why I never got the hype of No Man's Sky.
Me either.
Because I'm just like, oh my God, this is the best game. If you say anything bad about the game, I'm going to threaten you on Twitter and threaten to murder you. Yes, that actually happened to somebody. And I'm like, why are you up this game's ass? You don't know what it plays like. All you see is this world that looks like someone fucking poured orange juice over it. Ooh, oh boy. Why are you excited? Procedural generated games usually suck ass anyway.
But they said a magic word.
What was
Every so often there is a catchphrase in gaming that everybody goes, OMG! And procedural generation was the nerdgasm of the time. There was so much potential in it. It just didn't work because machine learning isn't far enough along to really make it work.
No, it isn't. They showed some of the creatures that it made, and it was hilariously bad. It was procedural because game design needs someone, the human element behind it, to make sure that environment works. When you just have a bunch of tools and you say to go to the computer, okay, do your ones and zeros and do some math and calculate it, it's not going to work because you don't know what the hell it's going to come out with.
But game designers love this stuff because it is so much cheaper to run something through a computer than have an artist at it. Art is the most expensive element of AAA games now.
Oh yeah, because especially with high resolution the textures are, man, you got to go deep in there, and it takes a lot of time.
Well, and there's way more artists. You want to work in video games right now, become an artist, not a programmer. They need a lot more of them.
Yeah, and that's what brings games way over budget too. From what I heard, is that the art design is so, especially now with like 4K. Well, 4K wannabe, at least, especially with the PlayStation 4 Pro. But you have these high resolution textures and people with these 70-inch 4K TVs, man, you got to sit there with like a microscope putting the pixels in as you're drawing those textures.
But this is becoming a problem with user interface as well. Games are being designed to have your face crushed right up against them. I had trouble reading some of the text on Andromeda on my screen. And it's just a design mistake. They didn't make the font big enough. And this is becoming a problem with this ultra high definition graphics, because if you're programming to the high end, the vast majority of your market is not running those specs. Like, that's why I love reading the Steam community reports when they come out to see what graphics cards people are using and all that stuff. And people are still running, that NVIDIA 970. That's what I've got in this machine.
970 still holds it down, though. You can do some really decent 1080p 14, even some 1440p stuff.
Not at maximum settings, though. And every so often you get a memory leak in a game, you've got problems. And it's amazing how many games on PCs still have memory leaks. Like, I noticed that, like, if you leave a game on pause too long because the cat will knock something over, and I'll get up to fix it, and I'll come back. The
cat will knock something over, man. It used to happen to me all the time in my old place.
Yeah, well, that's why I don't play multiplayer a lot, is because I need to be able to pause a game.
welcome to the world, my world, of having a 5-month-old. Yes.
There you go. So you know what it's like. And I mean, this is the thing that Kojima's really good at. That Metal Gear, I loved the Phantom Pain. Just because it did things, everything was done consciously. I loved watching the whole industry freak the fuck out over Quiet.
That was so stupid.
But it was so great to find out that there was actually a narrative reason. It was still...
It was a forced narrative reason, but who cares? Who cares?
But this is what artists do. In any other medium, it is accepted that art challenges. And we can disagree with them. We can say, you still went too far, Kojima, on Quiet. I'm there. There were little things they could have done with her costume, and I would have been totally on board with the explanation. But I believe completely that he intended that from the beginning, because he has this body that he knew people are going to think one thing about, but then she wasn't doing so much to, with her face. She wasn't doing a lot of makeup. She had but I believe that was deliberate on his part, not bad facial animation. So the minute I saw it, my biggest problem was, how did she not get sunburned in all that heat with that very pale skin? Because this is the bane of my existence. But I thought this is what art does. Art challenges and art makes mistakes. And we can say, I think he didn't sort of hit the LZ on that one and still appreciate the try. And I got to admit, that scene where she's sort of, that very joyous scene in the rain that everybody complained about, that I felt something in that cutscene. I thought it was actually pretty beautiful. It was joyous to me. And that's art. I give him credit for going there. I give The Witcher 3 credit for having a scene where they have sex on a unicorn, because it told me it was something about the characters.
Sex on a unicorn, that's great.
Oh, you haven't seen the scene?
I haven't seen the scene, no.
But it's actually it was perfect for those two, because they're sort of stuck together, and they're one of those couples that keep having to up the ante on the sex. Like, they cannot have vanilla sex. That's just too boring. It's gotta be donkey sex on a unicorn. And I was okay with that, because it told me something about them. That's what sex should do in any medium. Tell me something about you, not just two character models smacking together like a boat against a pier.
If sex isn't generally unless there's a valid reason for it, I'm against it. But if you're going to have sex in a game or a film or a TV show, let there be a reason behind it and a narrative behind it, the reason that they do it,
Yeah. But like I said, they're still figuring out how to tell these stories. And so I would rather see an artist try and fail like Kojima does, and he succeeds more often than he fails. I mean, sex has been a thing with Metal Gear from the beginning, sex and trauma. Yeah. And I was really hesitant to play the game because of that, because I'm like, I'm not sure I want to go into this headspace. You got to be prepared for it. But I'm not going to claim that. I think that's great that his games impact the way they do. And even if something makes you angry, if it feels like it's deliberate, like I said, I'm on board for that. I think gaming needs more of that as opposed to less, because we get a lot of pap. Like you said, the stories tend to be not so great.
That's an understatement, yes.
Yeah, and I mean, I can think of some really good game narratives. I can think of some stories that I thought were phenomenal. They're just not the ones most people cite. Like, I thought the characters in Gears of War 1 and 2 were actually great.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
Whereas people are like, oh, the writing in that game sucked. No, the characters talked the way they wanted them to talk. And I will defy anybody to say that the scene where Dom finds Maria
was a bad
in Gears
scene.
of War 2. I love that scene.
I would say it wasn't a bad scene. That was a good scene.
Yeah, and people are like, oh, you can throw all the tropes versus women at the world in it. I'm sitting there going, oh God, you poor son of a bitch. And the way they undersold the interaction between him and Marcus afterwards, I thought was so real. Like, these were dudes really digging deep on that dev team, that it wasn't crying and hugging and all that stuff. It was, are you okay? And Dom says nothing. And I was like, oh shit, kicked in the feels in the best way. But that is emotion in games, not this whatever we're getting served up. You know what I mean? Like, these games that I still can't get into Life is Strange.
I've never tried it. It just does not look like my kind of game at all.
And people have said it's exactly my kind of game, and I try, and
The hell kind of game is it? I've never even touched it.
It's in bad comparison here, but it's the closest thing I can compare it to is Gone Home.
I've played a little bit of Gone Home. Okay.
Like, if you want to horrify me, take me back to being a teenage girl. No one wants to go back to being a teenage girl who has been a teenage girl. That game appeals to people who never were teenage girls and people who kind of mentally still are.
I know some people like that.
Yeah. They're the people that kind of still see, and apparently it gets better after the first chapter, but I want my games to be as removed from reality as possible. I want to be able to do things in games that I can't do in real life. And I think that, and this is where Konami has a real opportunity. If they really seem to have learned from the mistakes that they made with the relationship with Kojima. And there's two sides to every story. It is tough having been on that management side. Sometimes you can totally relate to what the creator is saying, but you have people who you are beholden to who aren't going to let you do what they want to do. And then the question is, what do you do? I'm a dumbass. I usually back the creator and then I lose my job. Whereas people who want to keep their jobs don't. They back the financiers. And that's what's going on in game after game after game after game. There's money in it, and everybody uses that as a big talking point. But the problem is there's money in it. So the people that are continuing to put the money back in want to make more money out of it.
Yeah, they don't put money into something just to lose it. Yes.
Yeah, and you can't throw your money at everything. I mean, Kojima's games are relatively minimalist in a lot of ways. He focuses very much on his characters. Mm-hmm. The backgrounds are just kind of, they have those sweeping vistas. But what are you looking at in those scenes? You're looking at the people. They are so interesting. The millions of people around the world were staring at oil handprints on Norman Reedus's butt. It took me 4 views to even see that whale carcass. Mm-hmm. Because I was like, what's going on? Why does he have a baby? But human beings respond to faces. That's the way we're wired. And guys like Kojima are so good at it. The question is, for me, what's Konami doing with these classic brands? Are they going to remake Contra?
Yeah, and how would you? Yeah, like if it's going to be interesting. That's going to be a delicate balance because they can't make it into a Gears of War because even if it's a good clone, it'll still get ripped a new one, and just making like a revamped like arcade version may not be enough either. So where do you go with Contra?
Yeah, you'd almost have to go like XCOM with it, but those aren't going to sell like a Metal Gear Solid game.
No. it's going to be so interesting. Like what, and Castlevania, like I said, I probably said it 6,000 times in videos beyond this podcast too. I'd love to see them hire From Software. From Software kind of retired the Dark Souls. Pick them up. They would be the perfect dev team for it. But I'm afraid
force them to put color in their games.
Yeah, put a little more color in it, make it not so dreary, and you gotta and even keep a similar combat style, and that'd be a perfect Castlevania game.
Yeah, but the minute you said that, I'm like, ooh, I'd play that.
Yeah, that would be so perfect. But I'm afraid they're just gonna try to, even with Castlevania, just try to, let's just remake it as a classic, which that actually worked. Like there was Castlevania, The Adventure Rebirth, but I would love to see a AAA Castlevania game. I have to say this, and I'm still on topic, but off of it. A lot of people shit on Castlevania 64. I don't know if you ever played it. You ever play Castlevania 64?
Very briefly.
Yes, it was buggy. Yes, it had issues, but it was, if you look past the shit, which there was a lot of it, I beat that game too. I did enjoy it. It was a very, very good rough draft as to where Castlevania could have gone in the AAA sector. And they just, because it got panned, Konami was like, they just like dropped it like it was a hot potato. But how they had, like, the first level of that game, as flawed as that game was, where there was just sounds, and you were just in this creepy, eerie environment, and you just had like the tree crashing. If you really kind of think about it, almost Dark Souls does the same thing when you're dropped in initially of the game. And it works. And I was like, I remember being I was a teenager in high school, going back to playing on a big screen TV and playing Castlevania 64. I'm like, this is where it needs to go. Yeah. And it was almost like, even as many flaws as that game had with camera angles, oh my God, the camera angles were shit in that game. They had the right direction. And it's killed me to this day that they did not keep going forward with that, because the game was panned, and that sucks.
Yeah, and that's, again, kind of a bigger industry failure, that we don't have people who are good enough at their jobs to effectively talk about what worked as well as what didn't. And so the developers get feedback that is negatively skewed, and so they don't know where to go with it. And so it's just this emotional block.
Yes.
They just do not want to go back there. Like Heavenly Sword is another example of a game that got unfairly ripped apart.
That's what I've heard. You reminded me. I may actually have bought that for the PS3 too.
It's short, because the idea is that you're supposed to play it over and over and over again to get better at the combo system. Because the combat in that game, it was one of the first really great motion capture titles. They got Andy Serkis to be the mocap director, the guy who played Gollum in Lord of the Rings and King Kong, like he's Peter Jackson's mocap guy. He came in, and this game was, if it had been released even today with more content, it would be praised as female playable character and diversity, because it takes place in this fantasy China.
Okay.
Setting, and the main character is cursed, and it's this beautiful story with beautiful art direction, but the combat is really, really solid.
That's what I hear. That's what I kept on hearing about it.
And it's got this, usually laggy combat is bad, but because she's got these swords, there's this nice little lag, the same way God of War does, where it takes a minute to connect. And so you get in this sort of meditative state when you're doing combos.
It adds a level of fluidity to it. Yeah.
Oh, it's so pretty, but the experience was so bad. People in the press just didn't get that game at the time. That who was it? Team Ninja?
I think it was Team Ninja behind it. Yeah. You know what I think it was, and I want to get this thought up before. I think it was because at the time, PS3 was seen as cancerous.
Yes.
I think that hurt a little, and that kind of ties into what we're saying. Like everyone was like, nope, the PS3 sucks. Can't have a good exclusive. Who gives a shit? The PS3's doomed. That's when Adam Sessler had full boner thinking that like Sony was done as a whole. If you remember, he was saying that.
And that's a completely irresponsible thing for anybody in the media to say. You know, like the that really angered me, and that's why I remember you fuckers on that game, and now you guys are the social justice crusaders of 2016, 2017. Fuck you. I remember when you didn't have to be that way. I remembered what you really thought back in the day when I was going, no, this is a pretty good game, and I was getting, what do you know? You're a girl. Fuck you.
Really? They said that to you?
Oh, that's pretty much what I got back then, because it was a different time, and I got a lot.
Oh, I'm sorry to cut you off. That's what bothers me, though, is these people that dick ride whatever movement's going on.
Yep.
Now it's the super, extreme pro-feminist movement. So even though I was kind of a sexist dick back then, and I'm not pointing names at anybody, I'm just saying as if example, now because it's a new movement and this is where people are going and this is where the general consensus is, now I'm a feminist or now I'm this, and be your fucking self, man.
But you know what's carried over with these same people, because the management in these websites has changed very little since then. It's still the same people. The assumption that there is something inherently different about gamers who happen to be women is still there. Instead of,
I don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't get it either, and I am one. This
Why
idea,
having a vagina between your legs makes it different when you game is beyond me.
There are certain things that they found, like female typical gamers like exploration and collection more, but there are plenty of guys.
Well, there is. Yeah, but there is biological differences between men and women that how their brains work and everything. Yeah, of course, but
that has nothing to do with subject or gameplay. And this idea that, I must think a particular thing because I am female just angers me. And that has not changed since, what was that, like 10 years ago? Heavenly Sword came out 06,
that was
07,
I think it was 07. Yeah, that was when the PS3, like I said, was still poisoned, which I think is what hurt that game a lot.
Well, that and it was short. Like, the biggest complaint people had with it was that it was short.
How short is short?
It was about 6 to 8 hours. First playthrough. It was intended to be played through, multiple times. So you got your 18 hours out of it if you played it as intended. But it was short.
Okay, that is kind of fairly short. I could see complaining about that, even though you're supposed to play it more than once.
Well, the problem back in the day was it just wouldn't fit on the disc. Same problem the original BioShock and the original Mass Effect got into.
Wait, no, wouldn't it fit on a Blu-ray with 50 gigs? No.
Yeah, because of the graphics.
Okay, maybe I could see, because I know they did that with Uncharted 2, because I'm going to get super technical and give people headaches for a second. It's funny, as powerful as the PS3 was, the GPU unit was made by NVIDIA, and it was shit. Actually, it was shit compared to the processor that was, I'm not going to know the names, I'm talking about the GPU that was inside the 360. So because of the Blu-ray, how they got around that, like with Uncharted 2, they would have the uncompressed textures. There would be no, the GPU wouldn't do any decompression. So how they got around the fact that the NVIDIA chip inside the PS3 was anemic was they would just have the uncompressed textures on the Blu-ray, and they would take up almost the entire Blu-ray because they would just stream it right to the screen and have it, instead of having the graphics processor decompress it. So now, maybe that's the reason why.
Well, the other problem is anytime you're reading directly off of optical disc, you can only get it off fast enough as that disc spins. Mm-hmm. It's not like when you're using, chips, which is why everything's going back to chips. You can have, an 8-core processor and boom, 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 you're flying. So they could only get it off the disc so fast, too.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, and I mean, in a movie, that's awesome because you only have to pull so much data. But in a video game, again, it's just harder to make a game.
Yeah.
But yeah,
you are creating the world. Like, I know there's a bunch of CGI in movies now, but in a game, think about how much work, I know we're going all over the place, but think about how much work a photorealistic game is, like Battlefield 1. the amount that the artists, what they have to do to, when you look at the ground and you're pointing your gun at the ground and you see the dirt and the mud. Do you realize that one spot you're looking at probably took someone like 3 goddamn weeks to do?
Okay, this is why I don't play Battlefield. I am so bad at Battlefield because look at that tree, look at that grass, look at that sky, look at the boom, headshot. I am so distracted. I am terrible at that game.
Battlefield 1 is gorgeous too, so you'd be in deep shit. Yeah, Battlefield 1 is gorgeous.
I remember demoing Battlefield 3 and I was like, oh my god, that tree is... Oh my god, look at that! Like, I just kept getting headshotted because I was standing out in the middle of nowhere with my dick in my hand looking at the pretty. It's
official. Liana has a dick. There you go.
Oh, well, in games, I can be.
Oh, she has a virtual dick in games.
Virtual peen. Very, very important.
So Konami, will end with this for Konami. And because you made a good point before that I forgot to answer. You had so much with your IPs. Just don't try to compete. Don't try to recapture. Okay, don't try to just remake the same thing from 1987 with Castlevania. Go learn from like what with Castlevania 64. You had a lot of things right, and make something fresh and new. Reboot it and just reboot it the way you want to. Don't reboot it the way you think people want you to reboot it. And if you do that with all these people that you're trying to recruit to work for you, programmers and graphic designers, you will come back and you will be making a killing actually making AAA games again. And agreed. I'm done. I dropped the mic there. So the virtual mic that I don't have.
Yeah.
So speaking of which, I was actually going to mention before, this would have been another good transition. I have Bomberman R. It's another one I haven't played for the Switch yet, but we're going to be talking about the Switch anyway. Now, the Switch has had, every console, it's not a big deal. I've said this in my videos because when the PS4 Pro came out, they showed ones that were melting and the disc drive and the fan sounded like it was a jet. And when you make millions and millions upon millions of things that are on a conveyor belt in China, there's going to be things that go wrong. Which is
why a warranty exists.
Yes, and it happens. There's no way you could be making so many components like that and manufacturing millions upon millions of a product and have them all be perfect. So we've had issues with the Joy-Con. I personally said I haven't had issues with mine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have had no issues with mine. I've had none. Even like my fiance will play Zelda and she's not sitting right. She's like kind of like this on the couch and it's never had a syncing issue. People have had where the screen scratches. Now, because I've had a screen protector on mine since day one, maybe mine would, but it hasn't because it has a screen protector on it. But both of those issues, okay, if you had a Joy-Con that was not syncing, it's not the system itself. It's a half-broken controller or whatever. Send it to Nintendo and get another one. Or don't have a fish tank in your house. They actually said that. Don't play the game console near a fish tank and you won't have any interference issues,
Really?
Yeah, there was like a whole bunch of lists, like don't hear, like if I find a list, I'll put it in the description of the podcast. But there was like, don't have it near like mobile phones or other interference and you should be okay. So if you're Amish and own a Switch, you'd be good. You'd be great.
Oh man!
But whatever.
Now I'm intrigued by this.
But whatever. But it's like, okay, so you could send out half your Joy-Con. Yeah, it sucks. Maybe in the meantime you go buy another half, which they're expensive. But it's still the system is okay. The tablet part of it's fine. So those two things: the screen scratching. Go out and buy a $6 screen protector. Still sucks. You got to buy something extra. I still don't understand why Nintendo. I know they're going to say, "Oh, it's for kids." That's why they didn't put Gorilla Glass on the screen. $300 console doesn't have Gorilla Glass, just a plastic screen that's protecting the LCD. But things.
That might be because of the thing that happened with it. It's designed to be flexible.
Well, no, I think it was because if with glass, they didn't want kids having it because if the glass does shatter, because Gorilla Glass still can, and they don't want people cutting themselves up. But fine.
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo, in fairness, I wouldn't use Gorilla Glass if I was Nintendo either, because kids are going to whip that thing across the room.
But yeah, that's true. But it's such a tough call. If I was Reggie, I would be like sweating at my desk debating on what they should do. Because yes, you're right, but at the same time, having plastic, if a mosquito farts on it, it could scratch it. So,
but a scratch you can still use, and let's face it, we're not talking about people who are techies, right? We're not talking about people who have high-end anything. These are people who buy Leapfrog stuff for their kids, and that shit scratches the minute you take it out of the box. They're playing to expectations.
But my thing with that too, you have a point, but at the same time, they marketed the system towards an adult audience anyway.
But not gamers.
Okay.
That's not Nintendo's strategy. They want those people living in condos who are going to take it to their local Starbucks, or commuters. And one of the things that Gorilla Glass adds as well is weight.
It does. Okay. But I will stick with that. I think it should have had it, because that's...
I agree with you there. I'm just like, there are practical reasons
I get it, but
not to.
I get it, but if I was on their either board of directors or when they were engineering it, I would have been like, yeah, I think I should have had Gorilla Glass. But anyway.
I wonder if it was priced too.
I'm sure it was priced.
Yeah.
But when I spent $300 on a very powerful tablet hybrid console, I want to make sure that, putting it in the dock won't scratch the screen. But I'm not saying, like I've said in my videos, because I want to be totally fair and objective, I'm hearing it's not a major issue. Like I said, mine hasn't been scratched. I have had a screen protector on, so maybe my dock is scratching it, just the screen protector is doing its job. But both of those issues are system destroying defects.
Okay, yes, that's the point I was
This one. Now, this comes from Techno Buffalo. Let me make sure I have the article in front of me.
It's not just it. This is all over the place. Engadget has covered it. Other people have replicated this issue.
It's weird because it started. People went on forums to say, my Switch is bent. I didn't bend it. I didn't do anything funky. I put it in cases and took care of it. What's going on? And there was this one guy who went on Reddit, or person went on Reddit, and they show their Switch. I'm looking at it right now, and it's curved. It's not an insane curve, but it's enough that as soon as you look at the picture, you go, oh, something's wrong. Then there was another person, because they saw that picture, said, hey, let me check my Switch. That one's curved too. They have it laying right here on a desk. It looks like they're almost at work or something like that, like at a cubicle. And you see where the cartridge is again. And if you look at the first one where the cartridge is again, it's where it's bent, which shows me that's probably where the Tegra chip is, and it's getting too hot.
Yeah.
Then they show another one. That one's bent. And there's another guy who puts a, not a ruler or whatever, to measure.
A level.
I could not think of it for the life of me. Thank you.
A straight edge.
Thank you for saving so we didn't have dead air. That one is bent in almost the same way. And the funniest thing is that the author of the article, Joey Davidson from Techno Buffalo, is like, man, I've been playing my Switch a lot. And he said he plays it mostly out of in portable mode. Let me check mine. Lo and behold, his Switch is also bent too. So now the guy who put the original picture up, he said that he went out to Nintendo and they said, it's an isolated incident, which of course they're going to say. They're not going to be like, oh my God, it's tell everyone it's widespread. Don't go out and buy a Switch now because your Switch is going to. But this one concerns me, even if it's a small percentage, because this is a system destroyer.
My bad. That noise is, this story has made it all the way to Fox News.
Really?
Yeah, that was the Fox News website autoplaying. They've got it up now. This is they're calling it Bendgate.
Yeah, it was already called Bendgate when I did the original video on it. That now Nintendo's probably shitting themselves. Reggie probably has sweat falling off his curly hair right now. My concern with this is this, and this part's speculation, and I'm going to totally nerd out again. There was rumors that Nintendo went with the chip that's in here. It's been confirmed by Digital Foundry and other sources. Is the same? I don't know if you know about Nvidia's their Shield TV, the box. Yep. It's for the same chip that's in there. And they actually did like a die to die comparison of the Tegra chip in the Shield TV and the Tegra chip in the Switch. It's the same one. Mm-hmm. The rumor that I heard is that Nintendo didn't want, because Nvidia was saying, hey, why don't you get the Pascal version of the Tegra chip? It runs cooler, it's more powerful. And Nintendo was like, no, we need to get the system out now. The Wii U is dead. We have all this dead air in terms of sales. Let's put the older chip in there. I wonder if it was that rush in design, because you're basically taking a chip that I don't think anyone has. There may be one tablet that has the X1 chip in it minus the Switch. I wonder if it was, and it's a much bigger tablet than the Switch is. I think it's like a 10-inch tablet or something like that. The Switch is tiny. I wonder if it was that rushed design choice for a chip that may run too hot that's causing this to happen.
I think it might be something else as well, and it links to that idea of a plastic screen. If they're going heavy in plastics in their manufacturing, when you're in, we're both reaching for words now. When you're demoing your product, when you're in prototype mode, you tend to use a fairly standardized set of materials. This happened with the Xbox One as well. When you go to mass production, especially with plastics, you get variations.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's never perfect because that's the nature of plastic. Yeah.
Right. And so it's possible that some of the plastics used to manufacture the Switch are just not holding up the way they did. Because I know Nintendo tests the ever-loving fuck out of this stuff, and I can't believe they didn't run it for long periods. So this seems to me like something where going from prototype to manufacturing, quality slipped in the materials. Because it's one thing to say in the lab. It's another, okay, we're going to use this plastic and it's heat safe to whatever. The minute you get to
real world performance.
Mass production.
Yeah.
Like you said about there's going to be failures, there's an even higher rate of, it's not even a failure, it's just one batch of plastic is slightly different than another, and sometimes there's no reason. It was sitting on a truck too long, or it got exposed to cold, or whatever. These are plastics. It's not glass, it's not metal. There's a reality here, and it sounds like they might have just gotten some batches that could be quite large that are failing, or the place that manufactured them cheaped out, and they're going to find out the hard way.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how widespread this is. It's also Shane Lewis from Re-Res TV on YouTube said an interesting point too, that maybe it's. But see, there's something that refutes that, though, actually, in the Techno Buffalo article, that maybe the dock is actually insulating the system and causing it to have too much heat. But the guy Joey Davidson, who wrote his article...
Yeah, he's not using the dock.
75% of the time, he's not using the dock. It's in portable mode. So
yeah, see, I think the problem is from the inside. It's just not...
There's a fan in there, but the fan may not be doing enough.
Yeah, but where is it venting as well? Those things puke out a shit ton of heat. And, I'm fascinated by the cooling in the PS4 because it's so damn clever. But you have to make sure that is way out from the back of any like piece of furniture you put that in. Because
if it pushes the heat onto the wall back there, and it kind of like bounces the heat back, and then the next thing you know, it's a jet engine. Yeah, it
just blasts it all out. My Alienware laptop is the same way. It's better than the Asus gaming laptops that were like jet engines out the back. But the way the heat is sinking, you make even a small change to that from prototype to mass production, that could cause a heat buildup on the inside of the unit that has nothing to do with docking.
And if you look at where the vent is, that's where the bend kind of starts, what's telling me is that either the plastic sucks, like you said, or it's a combination of the plastic sucks and that little fan in there is not doing enough of a job to get the heat out fast enough before the plastic starts warping.
Or the fan's working, but there's just not enough of a channel to get enough air out.
Yeah,
if it's getting blocked, that'll back it up.
It'll be interesting because this, like I said, even if it's a small percentage, my concern with this is that that's something eventually what happens if it keeps bending? Eventually that's going to damage the LCD screen. You know what I mean?
It's also bending because of the heat buildup. So
eventually it's going to cook itself to death. Yes, there's no way around it. It's
Samsung phones.
They exploded.
I get a little worried. I'm glad that it's not where the battery is situated. That would be scarier.
Yeah, because the battery's on the other side. They said that, yeah.
Yeah. So of all the things that could be wrong, and I mean, let's face it, they're going to figure it out, and anybody who has this happen can take their Switch back for a refund. For an exchange.
No one's going to get screwed out of money with this. Let's make that abundantly clear. Yeah, Nintendo's not going to be like, oh yeah, it sucks for you, you know?
Yeah. It's funny because when I bought my PS3, I was warned that if you play this constantly for 6 months, you're going to burn it out. You need a new one. So there are issues with manufacturing on the first generation of a device like this because they need to create so much supply so fast. Mine didn't. Mine hung out, and I played the shit out of that thing. But I suspect this has something to do with manufacturing, and it will be fixed. It's still a bummer, though.
Yeah, imagine buying a system for $300, and then the next thing you know, it looks like a boomerang. I'm being extreme. It doesn't look like a boomerang, but
okay. But this is technology. You can buy phones for $700 and have them fail instantly. You can buy a brand new, component for your PC, and you're not careful when you're installing it. Boom! Shock, dead, fried. I've had power supplies right out of the box blow within a week.
Well, look at it. Look at the EVGA with their NVIDIA cards. They're the VRM on there. The voltage regulators were putting the NVIDIA. People were like, "Wait a second, my computer smells funny. It's smoking." They were like lighting on fire. Yeah. So
because it was just going unregulated.
Well, yeah, it was. They weren't being cooled properly, I believe it was. Because I remember there were some people who remedied it before, and VGA finally did a fix where they were putting thermal pads on the VRM and fixing it that way. But we'll have to wait and see with this. But the reason why I made a bigger deal about it bending is because that even if it's a small percentage, that's still a shitty failure. That's still
especially since this is stuff that Nintendo's brand is associated with kids. They're making very kid-friendly games, and tech writers are able to spot this stuff. If these are in people's homes who aren't aware, that starts to get scary.
Yeah, what happens if this isn't just a console failure issue, that this thing could light on fire if it starts overheating too much? Yeah.
So, I mean, on the bright side, this was caught when it was fairly small because of eagle-eyed early adopters. I think this is the system actually working, personally, as opposed to it being the Samsung phones that exploded on airplanes.
God. My fiance had one of them, too.
That's scary.
And nothing... And hers was fine. And hers never had an issue. But, Samsung actually sent out a firmware update that they were basically bricking it. They're like at first it was like, yeah, you need to return this device. You really need to return it. Hey, if you don't fucking return the device, we're going to brick it, so get a new goddamn phone. It's basically what they did.
The funny thing is that Sony, when that was going on, I have a Sony phone, and they sent up update.
You're like one of three people.
Yeah, I really like the phone.
They make good phones, but it's just so funny. Sony cannot penetrate the smartphone market, but anyway.
Because they don't want to spend the millions and millions. Actually, the biggest problem with Sony is they don't give out demos. They should just splatter the market with product and have it in people's hands, because that's why people buy iPhones. That's why people buy Samsung. They see it around. I love my Sony phone.
It's all over.
They patched their battery stamina mode right after the Samsung thing happened. I think they're like, just to be on the safe side, and I actually get less battery life out of my phone now, because they tweaked it, I guess, to stop the same thing. I do notice that it gets a lot less hot. The thing about Sony phones is they'll shut down if they start overheating. So they don't have that issue. But I guess just in case, they did it too.
This is what pisses me off about the whole, the battery, it's not replaceable. Do you realize that if Samsung stuck to how like the Note 4 was, where you could actually take off the back and put a new battery in, that issue would have been going like that?
Well, it's the waterproofing, at least I know on my phone, that causes the problem, that they just put this like sort of shellac on everything. And if you pull out any component, your phone is no longer waterproof.
That's why I'd rather not have a waterproof. I'll buy a case. because that was one of the things that always, I mean, I'm tempted to get the S8. As a matter of fact, I have a full boner for the S8. I probably am going to get it. But that was one of the things that sold me on the Note series, is that not only was it this big, powerful, beautiful phone, okay, people, I remember reviewers, it pisses me off because I honestly think it was the reviewers that kind of bullied Samsung into making the nice, pretty backs that you can't remove the phones anymore. But they were there because every reviewer was like, "Oh, the back is all plastic, and it really, compared to their competitor Apple, which we totally jerk off to, it doesn't feel as premium. Who gives a shit? So when your battery dies in a year and a half, yeah, what happened? Was I too loud again?
No. The whole idea of it doesn't feel as premium.
Yeah, who gives a flying shit?
Premium means what's inside, not just the form factor. I mean, Apple are they were masters of making things that, it was Steve Jobs. It wasn't the community as a whole. But they were really good at making things look pretty. But there's more to a premium brand than looking pretty.
Yes.
It has to perform. And see, there again, it's the industry doesn't know what it's talking about, and companies are changing their products to avoid bad press as opposed to actually providing value and functioning products to their consumers. It's a real disconnect.
Think about what a feature it is. And actually, Samsung for a while actually marketed that feature. I remember they had commercials where it was like I think it was a Note 4, where you could take the back off. You could, and they were showing a guy, "Oh, my iPhone's dead. Damn it, my iPhone's dead." The guy's like, "Oh yeah, I got this note here. Oh look, I got another battery that's fully charged." That's such a good feature. Who cares that the back is made of plastic? Oh no. So if your back cracks, whereas if your back cracks, like I have an iPhone now, if my back cracks on that, I got to replace the whole phone. My back cracks on the plastic back on my Note 4, you just get a new back.
But that planned obsolescence is the way Apple makes money.
Yes, and other companies were like, "Oh yeah, cha-ching."
Yeah, they don't want people being like me and keeping my phone for 5 years. No, that's probably why Sony can't make penetration. We don't buy phones as much.
Yeah. That's probably it. Yeah. So let's make the masses, which even though I'm well aware of it, it kind of makes me hypocritical because my Note 4, I could have probably still kept that goddamn thing and it would have been fine, but I have to have the newest toy out there because I'm a dumbass.
But the whole system is pushing people to new. After that 2 years, your cell phone plan starts going, you have a free upgrade.
Yeah, because they want to. Yeah. One, the cell phone company, the providers love when you stick in their contract because that makes them more money. And two, the cell phone sellers or the cell phone manufacturers want you to get a new phone.
But then you're also buying a new case, a new screen protector, because they never switch over, right? No. You have to buy new headphones because there's no headphone jack on an iPhone anymore.
Which makes me hate this thing. Which is another reason why when I saw the S8 had a headphone jack, I was like, oh, thank God, because I use at night. Like I use at night because my fiance watches her reality shows, which make me want to kill myself, and I want to watch something on my phone. This is an iPhone, and the battery's not great in this thing. Okay?
No, they're not.
I know the Plus is a lot better, but this is not a Plus. It's a smaller size. I kind of actually like the smaller size, but that's besides the point. So at night, my battery is like 20%. So, and when you start watching videos and stuff like that, you'll see that percentage go down. So, and I always have Bluetooth headphones. So I'm sitting there, I'm watching something, and I'm like, okay, I don't have my Bluetooth headphones because unless you buy a $300 pair, most of them are shit and break. Yeah. And I'm like, I have this nice pair of regular headphones I want to use, but I need to charge the phone, and I have to use a stupid dongle. So I either have to use the dongle or charge the phone. I can't do both.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And everyone's like, oh, but wait, Rich, you could go out and buy a stupid-ass testicle that hangs off the bottom of it that gives you both the option to charge and listen to music. But I'm like, hey, you know what? With the 6S, which was the same size as this phone, they had the headphone jack on there. So you're telling me that someone had to make a product to solve a problem that Apple artificially made. And there's
Apple is all about ecosystem, right? They want to force you to buy more and more Apple products to talk to other Apple products.
And they're sitting there. I remember Phil Schiller, I believe his name was sitting there saying, "Oh, it's an antiquated technology. The headphone jack, it's over 100 years old." I'm like, dude, Samsung just made the S8 that has more technology than the iPhone, and they have a headphone jack, and it's actually more water resistant than the iPhone.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I use my headphone jack on my phone to put in a wireless mic pack so I can shoot things, because it's a 1080p camera. You can go 4K on the Sony phones. Yeah. So I use it as a camera in the field. It's this tiny little thing. You put in a wireless mic pack, boom.
And with good lighting, it looks amazing. Yeah, I know. That's the same with I got to give the iPhone credit too. Same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But you can't put those mini jack devices, like those improved audio devices, into an iPhone the way you can with something with a jack. Like, it's why, to make your phone a few millimeters thinner?
And they didn't even really. I don't think this iPhone's any thinner than the 6S. It's the same shell. They just move the antenna bands to make them blend in more.
That's it?
And that's it. They moved the antenna. The antenna bands are right on the back on the 6S. Let me see. They were right here on the 6S. They moved them up here, which I will say one thing that's cool with the black, because I have the black version of the phone. You don't even see the antenna bands at all. Mm-hmm. But who cares?
Who gives a shit?
And I'm going off on a rant on iPhone now. I have a mic. It's a lapel mic that plugs into the lightning port on here. Excellent quality. I believe it's Sennheiser that makes it. And the thing that was nice about it on my 6S, hindsight being 2020, I would have probably freaking kept it, was that you could monitor, what you just recorded. So you make sure Now, guess what you can't do? Because it only has the lightning connector, which the mic has to plug into. It was just a stupid, selfish, dumb design. They want people buying iPads that are doing that stuff, which are a shit ton more expensive. Overpriced, underpowered. They're trying to make the Pro a laptop. Just stop. I understand the laptop industry's dying, and they're trying to find a way to make a hybrid product, kind of like Microsoft did with the Surface and the Surface.
Because it's doing very well for them.
Because the Surface truly is a computer tablet. It's a full Windows 10 device.
Yeah, but I mean, let's face it, most people most people don't need the power at home. They need something that plays videos. They need something that checks emails and, a few other features. That's pretty much it. So they don't need it. That's fine. Get a tablet.
That's why the computer industry, that's why the laptop and the non-enthusiast laptop and non-enthusiast PC industry is dying.
But man, it's a great time to be an enthusiast laptop customer. The customer service has gotten so good.
Because they have nothing else to do.
They do house calls now. The key broke on my Alienware laptop.
That's a typical thing to happen, yeah.
Yeah, they fail. The little plastic things underneath just crack.
My brother's laptop, same thing happened, yeah.
Yeah. They had somebody come to my house. I didn't have to package it up. I didn't have to ship in. Within a week, they had somebody at my house replace the keyboard right in my house. Same day service.
Wow.
Unreal.
That wouldn't have happened back in like the mid 2000s, because that's when laptops were still selling like crazy, so they didn't give a shit about you.
Even when was it? It was a while back where you have to pack up the system and send it in and wait your 4 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever it is, and then you get it back and it may or may not work. I actually procrastinated getting it fixed because of this, and I finally called them like, damn, I'm not going to wait next time. Anytime there's a problem, I'm right in there on the Alienware customer service line. It's fabulous.
Well, yeah, man, because again, the reason... Well, that's also, too, because Dell got ripped a new one. Man, we're going on Dell now. Dell got ripped a new one because their customer service was so bad that they actually overhauled it.
Yeah, and this is precisely why we don't have sponsors on this podcast.
Yeah, because imagine if we had Dell, or imagine we had like HP, or even Nintendo right now. Nintendo would be flipping their shit right now.
Well, we hit Xbox on one thing. We hit PlayStation in one podcast. We have hit like every major
EA. We ripped EA a new one. Like, who the hell would actually sponsor this? Seriously.
We were nice to Ubisoft, but wait, there's week 2.
Yeah, wait. I'm sure they're known for doing things like they we'll wait till next week, but For Honor with all the microtransactions.
I'm gonna have to get up to speed on this. I just heard about this boycott.
Because I'm not sure if it has to do with, but I know that people were pissed off with the last. I kind of fell out of keeping up to date with For Honor. Is that there's so many microtransactions that if you actually try to grind to get without buying things, if you actually tried to grind to achieve them, it would take like 2 years or something like that. Something insane. So people got pissed off with that. But with Nintendo, we'll have to jumping over. We'll end it with this. With Nintendo, we'll have to wait and see, because I'm hoping that chip is not too hot. That Tegra chip from NVIDIA is not too hot for that small case, and they just can't cool it properly in any. What scared me is this. This is I almost forgot to mention this. This is why I'm more concerned about it than I was about the Joy-Con and stuff like that. Is my buddy Jay, he also has a YouTube channel called 3 Kilobytes. He actually checked his Switch after seeing my video. His Switch is bent. When you start knowing people that have the issue that you're talking about personally, that's when there may be more legs to it, and you should be more concerned about it than, it's just a passing thing.
Yeah, it's not like that optical drive problem on a small number of PS4s. It seems quite widespread.
Well, we'll see. A week. Let's give it a week. We'll tell. When we do the next podcast, that's when we'll see. Because if Reggie comes out and does a video on YouTube or something talking about it, or on Fox, then it's a bigger problem. Then
it'll be interesting if they actually have to replace the chip.
They may have to. Yeah, NVIDIA may have to make a fabrication process that's smaller. We'll have to wait and see.
Or they just got to use more expensive plastic.
Or more durable plastic, or maybe make better ventilation so the plastic they have doesn't bend.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's that simple a solution. They just need to get the air out quicker.
Yeah. A bigger fan. So, all right, I think, man, that actually was close to a 2-hour podcast we had there. Thank you guys for listening. Once again, if you want to support the podcast and keep us sponsor-free, which is what we're hoping for, I'll have a link to the Patreon below in the description of the podcast on Podbean. I'm hoping by next week to also have this on iTunes, but iTunes is funky.
Such a pain in the ass.
And they kind of, it's not that they won't accept it. I'm sure the podcast will be accepted, but it's iTunes. So thank you so much for listening. Liana, we will see you next week. Again, thank you so much for being on. And until the next episode, guys, have a good one.